This is Mr. Mike, and thanks for watching A Parts Life. Please like, subscribe, comment, ask questions. I will try to make video replies to your questions or respond to them in the comments. So today, I wanted to talk about what is a parts to pad reconciliation and why you should do it and how you do it. I recommend you probably get a pen and a paper for this video to write down the steps that I'm going to go over because there is a lot of stuff to go over and it's quite an informative video. There might be some things that you may want to write down or watch this video multiple times just so you understand the ins and outs of what I'm talking about. So I've got kind of bullet point crib notes here that I'm going to look at on my computer and then go over all this stuff with you. So what is a parts to pad rec? A parts to pad reconciliation is when you compare your pad value, the dollar value of your parts pad, to what accounting has in their system, okay? And those two numbers should typically be within 2% of one another. Ideally, they should be the same, but that doesn't really happen very often. So why should you do it? You should do it because when there is a difference that's more than 2%, and especially if that difference is in the tens of thousands, you know that there's a problem. Either somebody's not billing something out correctly or someone's not posting something to the correct account. And it'll tell you right away if there's a problem, and you have to then chase down where that problem is coming from. And I'll have a video on that later on, but today I'm just going to go over all the steps essentially of what you do when you do a parts to pad reconciliation. Now I want to start with, how do these numbers work? How do they work on the parts side and how do they work on the accounting side? So to do that, let's pretend that you are walking into a brand new building with no parts on the shelves. It's not a dealership that's open yet, just for the sake of simplicity. So today your parts pad value is 0 and your accounting GL value is 0. Tomorrow, you receive your first shipment, $100,000 worth of parts. So you go and you put those parts away and you go into the system, and in your system, all your sources are already set up, and I'll make a separate video on the sources as well, how to do that. But you receipt those parts into the system, right? And once you receipted them in, now your pad value is $100,000. And you then take those invoices and you give them to your accounting department. They enter them on their side, and now they're at $100,000. So you balance at that $100,000, okay? And essentially, if you sell a part, say a $1,000 part, once that part is cashiered, it'll credit both your parts pad value by that $1,000 and then credit the accounting GL value. So you'll both drop by $1,000, and then it'll bring you from 100,000 to 99. And then when you receive more parts, it'll go up, and vice versa, and so forth and so forth. It's sort of like this dance, okay, between the parts department and the accounting GL balance. Now, how do you do a parts to pad reconciliation? It's fairly simple. Once you know what numbers to bring up and add together, it's super simple to do. Some people do it on Excel. If you want to do it on Excel, sure, go ahead. It's up to you. I did it. I've done them on a piece of paper with a pen, on a yellow pad. I've done them on a napkin, okay? And just add all the numbers up together, bring it to your accounting department, and with all the backup, and then you're going to compare. You're going to compare the dollar value that your accounting department has and what dollar value you've come up with. Now, how do you come up with your dollar value? Now, on the accounting side, all they're going to do is an inquiry in the GL, and it's going to print out a dollar value for every account. So a dollar value for 242, 243, 244, 245, whatever you have in there, okay? And it's going to break them down individually, and then at the bottom, it'll total them all together, right? So their pad value is X, and this is how then you need to add what numbers you've got to add to match up to that number. So you need to start with the pad value itself. So you need to print your management report, and on the management report, it'll show you what the dollar value of your inventory is, okay? And it'll, sometimes on CDK, it's the last page where it says grand total on the top rather than the separate sources. Reynolds & Reynolds is screen 2213. It shows it, I think, on the first page. And every DMS has kind of a separate setup, but they're all management reports that give you the dollar value. So you take your dollar value of the hard parts in your system, okay, without your clean cores, just the parts. And it'll have a line on there. It says there, you know, total investment. And then you write down that number, whatever that pad value is. Below that line, you're going to want to have a line for new core value, okay? That's the dollar amount of all of the new shiny cores that are sitting on your shelves, okay? So you're going to want to write your pad value, right below it, write your new core value, okay? Then you're going to need your dirty cores on hand. Now, if you follow my system, and I have a separate video on this, of the dirty cores on hand and then a pending in-transit core bin, you'll have 2 bins, okay? What you do in that case is take your dirty cores on hand pile and add it up, and whatever that number is, you're gonna write that below your new core value. So now you got a line that says dirty cores, okay, on hand, and then write in that dollar value. And right below that, you're gonna write down dirty cores in transit. So in your other bin, okay, you'll have all the invoices or all the stuff that you're waiting to get credited on for cores. You add that up and you write that right below your dirty core on hand line. You'll have a separate line that says dirty cores in transit. So you write that dollar value in, okay? Now below that, if you have a pending parts return, okay, so say this is a return you've taken off of your shelves, you've sent it back and you're waiting to get credited, okay? Now, those parts are off your shelf, they're out of your system, but accounting hasn't removed them yet because they haven't received credit. So you have to account for those in your number, because when you remove them out of your pad, your number dropped, but theirs didn't. So you have to have a separate line in there that'll bring your number back up, okay, until you get that credit. So you have that separate line, pending return credit. And then right below that is tire return credits. So tires, say you've sent back tires to Dealer Tire, whoever your tire supplier is, okay? You've removed them out of your system, same thing. It's dropped your pad value, but it hasn't dropped accountings because they haven't received that credit. So you have to have that separate line for tire return credit. You add that back in to, again, make your numbers balance. And then a separate line for outside vendor credits. So if you're waiting to get credited for parts from AutoZone, Napa, Santa Claus, whoever, okay, you have a separate line. You know, when they pick up the parts and they give you that, like a pickup slip, but it's not a credit, again, those parts, say you return them, they're out of your pad, but they've still been entered in accounting if you handed in the invoice for them. So you have to adjust your number back up to make them match if you remove those aftermarket parts and send them back. So add that dollar value. Outside vendor credits. And then you need to go into your system and print out something called service WIP. That is service work in process, okay? That is the cost of the parts on every open repair order, okay? Your shop might have no open repair orders or it could have 1,000 open repair orders. I've seen it either way, okay? But you need to get the dollar value of the cost of all those parts, because once you bill a part out, it comes off of your shelf. It comes out of your pad. It drops your pad and it puts it into work in process. And until that repair order is closed and paid for and cashiered, it doesn't drop the accounting's GL number. So because that part is billed out and it's dropped your pad value, you have to account for that work in process. So you have to have a separate line. Underneath your vendor credits, you should have service work in process. And then the dollar value of all that. And then right below that is parts work in process. So that's going to be a report that shows all of the open invoices or open credits, or together invoices and credits that you have to account for as well. Because once you bill a part out, okay, until once the part is billed out, it takes it out of your pad, unless you're on dealer track, by the way, because it puts that into parts at cashier, because dealer track is a whole different animal, because the parts don't get relieved out of your inventory until the cashier actually cashiers that. And once you've got that parts whip, you also need to have a printout of your appreciation, depreciation, okay? Because your inventory's value could have gone down by $5,000 or it could have gone up by $5,000. And there's many dealerships where accounting doesn't make any adjustment when the appreciation, depreciation happens. As crazy as that may sound, that is the case. They sometimes let it ride till the end of the year, or they let it ride till the next inventory, and that could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But you're going to want to account for that, because every time a price update happens, that fluctuates your pad, okay? So if you had a depreciation of $5,000 and accounting didn't enter for it, well, your pad dropped by $5,000. So you have to add that back in on a separate line, or decide with your accounting department whatever it is that you're going to do to get rid of that $5,000 variance, okay? Or how you're going to account for that. That's something you have to come up with your accounting team to see how they want to do it. And right below that, you want to have your missing part disputes. So say you were billed for a part, okay, and your office wants to enter that invoice to make the statement balance, because the part statement at the end of the month, they have to basically have all of the invoices entered. You've got to account for the missing part or damaged part dispute, because it's on the accounting side, but it's not been receipted in your system because the part is missing and you're still waiting on a credit. You have to manually up your pad on that Excel sheet, okay, to make it balance with what the GL statement is. And then you're going to want to account for packing slips. What does that mean? So packing slips are basically parts that you have receipted into your system, okay, and you've got the packing slip for the part, but you haven't been billed by the manufacturer. So what happens then is, say $1,000 order comes in, say it's $1,000 worth of tires. You receive it in, it's going to raise your pad by $1,000. But if you haven't gotten the bill for that yet, okay, you have to account for that on your parts to pad rack. So you have to manually raise the accounting GL to match with that, because eventually that bill is going to come in and they're going to backdate it into the month if the month isn't closed yet. Okay, so again, packing slips, those are parts that you've received, but you've not been billed for them yet. And then same goes for billed, not received. What does that mean? That means that the manufacturer has already billed you for parts that have come out of their warehouse, okay, but you haven't received the order yet. So say it's like the last day of the month, and they've billed you for parts that they shipped out on the 31st, okay, and that invoice is dated the 31st, and your accounting department enters, say that $1,000 invoice, okay, well, you have to manually account for that and have a separate line on your parts to pad rack to raise your side, your parts pad, back up to match with that GL. So what you do is, once you have all those separate line items, you add them up together and you're going to get a total. And you take that total number you have of your parts pad, which consists of all those different line items, and you compare it to the GL number that your accounting department has. And as long as they're within 2% of one another, then you're good to go. Now, if they're not, you've got to go look for the problem. You've got to go find out where that issue is happening that's causing it to askew. And I will have a separate video on how you go to look for that problem and how you find it and fix it. So you make an entry, the accounting department has to make an entry. They make an adjustment, you should be making an adjustment. It has to balance together, okay? And if you're doing a monthly parts to pad rack, and every month, everything is good. January, February, March, April, May, everything is perfect. It's within a 2% balance. And all of a sudden, you do one, and there's a $20,000 variance. You know that a mistake happened that month, and you have to backtrack and find where that mistake came from. Basically, that's what it is. It's a dance between parts and accounting. And at the end of the month, you need to compare those numbers together and make sure that they're the same. Because if you don't do a monthly parts rec, okay, say you rely on an annual inventory or a biannual inventory or an inventory you do every 5 years, well, you could do that inventory and find out you're off $500,000, okay, because there's been a problem every month for 5 or 10 grand and you've not been correcting it or catching it because you don't do a parts rec, so you don't know about it. That little seed is going to add up to a big giant monster, and you don't want that to happen. Believe me, I did a parts inventory. Somebody had a negative $173,000 variance. Had they been doing the stuff that they should have been doing all along, they would have caught what month these issues started to happen and fixed those issues so they don't snowball into a monster. So anyway, that's how you do a parts to pad reconciliation. Please like, subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, please write them below. I will try to answer them or make a video about them. Thank you very much. Have a good one.